Good afternoon. I'm Sgt Samuels, Durham Regional Police Service. Today I'm here to host a conversation with Richard White. And Richard White, for all of you who aren't familiar with Wally White, Constable Wally White, Durham Regional Police Service, Richard is Constable Wally White's son. And furthermore, Wally White is known as Durham Regional Police Service's first Black police officer. Now, there was one other police officer who would have been with the organization around that time, but Wally is certainly at least one of two officers that could be looked upon as being first as Black officers with Durham Regional Police Service. Now, Wally's real name is Walford White. And again, we want to just take this time during Black History Month to do a little bit of a profile on Wally White. And unfortunately, Wally White is no longer with us. So you could probably speak to that, Richard. Your father died a number of years ago. But we're happy to have you here today to tell us a little bit about your father. So just to start, anything that I've said that I haven't said, could you just introduce yourself and a little bit about your father?
So as Officer Samuels mentioned, my name is Richard White, and I came to Canada when I was about 7 years old, which is about 50 years ago. And so I guess the best thing to start is to start off with the history, not so much about me, but about my father. My father worked at the docks in Jamaica, in Port Antonio, and it was considered to be a pretty good job, but he wanted to provide better opportunities for his family. And so at the time, there was my father, my mother, his wife, and I had two other siblings, an older sister and a younger sister. And he wanted to provide better opportunities for us. So he said he's going to go to Canada. So he came to Canada and to try to secure a good job so he could bring us up. And so it took about a year before he could do that. So when he first came to Canada, his goal was to be a lawyer, actually. He did pretty well in school, and he thought that he'd love to be a lawyer. But when he took a look at the amount of time that would be involved in actually becoming a lawyer, he realized that it would be too long to get us to Canada. So he could not wait, and then he became aware of an opportunity to be a police officer in Durham. It was actually offshore police department at that time. Now, he was living in Scarborough with people that he'd met, and the job was available in Oshawa. And so he became a police officer because it said that it offered a decent pay, and he'd be able to take care of a family with that, and he'd be able to get us to Canada right away. And so within a year, we were in Canada. Now, he didn't tell me the story, obviously, when I was a child. He told me the story when I was much older. And that's one of the few things he actually told me about being a police officer.
Nice. So just so I'm clear, he came to Canada, originally was looking to get into law in a different way as a lawyer.
Yes.
And then he decided to join the police service as a means to be able to support his family and bring his family up to Canada sooner.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And obviously, as you have already said, he ended up joining the Oshawa Police Department.
Yes.
Can you tell us roughly the year that he might have joined, as well as why did he choose the Oshawa Police Department?
So it was probably 1970, I believe. And because I believe we came up April 1971. So, and the reason why he joined, I'm not sure of the full circumstances, but he said there was a job available at that time. He didn't tell me anything else. So he said the job available at the Oshawa Police Department. Now, I'm not sure if they were looking for officers or if they were looking specifically for somebody that was from a minority group. He didn't say, but I don't have any more specifics than that. He didn't say anything about it.
Okay. But clearly he chose Oshawa Police Department, and
Yes.
and my understanding is at the very least he would have been the first black police officer with Oshawa Police Department.
That's what I was led to believe, but I could be wrong. But I was led to believe that he was the first one.
Okay, yeah, that's
Now,
my understanding.
now I'm not sure whether you want. I'll mention that being the first black police officer, circumstances at that time was certainly different than they are here in terms of race relations. And so, with that in mind, it did receive specific direction and counsel from the staff sergeant, and the staff sergeant let him know that you're a black police officer in a white community. So be judicious and careful the way you execute the law and the way you do your job. Uh, and at the time when my dad mentioned it, he seemed somewhat concerned that the staff sergeant thought it was necessary to explain it to him that way, because my dad, he's pretty sharp, and so for him he would have understood the dynamics. But at the time when he told me this, I would have been a kid, so probably a teenager. I thought, how rude is what I was thinking. But now as an adult, I realized that was very prudent, because it was very important that relation that my dad had with the community, because he was going to be very visible, was good to help other minorities and also to help the police force. So one of the things that was interesting was the number of times when I was asked by people throughout my life, "Are you related to Officer White?" And there were many, many people that knew him because he stood out, obviously being the only black police officer. So when people met him, they remembered him. Also, he was big. Like, he was a very big guy. He was 5'11", probably about 250 pounds, wide shoulders, big arms. He was a very intimidating person. Not
Okay,
that he
very
was mean.
cool.
He was intimidating because he was just a big guy. He tended to be very friendly when dealing with people.
I see. Imposing.
That's the proper word. Yeah, he was very imposing. Yes.
Okay. Um, can you tell us any stories that your father may have shared with you about policing? I'll say policing to start.
Dad never shared anything. I mean, he never shared anything at all. Uh, I mean, he's picked us up a few times in the police car, because in the police cruiser, because circumstances warranted that he had to get us that way. But he never shared anything. Uh, oh, he did share something in terms of mindset, though. He said that we're paid to protect people that don't want us there. And that's it. He didn't share anything other than that. He just said we're paid to protect people that don't want us there.
Okay. Okay. What does that mean to you, or what did you have did that have any significance to you?
Yeah, it did, but it was kind of vague to me at the time. But I think essentially it was saying that the police and what they do is not fully understood by the public. That the public don't necessarily understand that police have to be there, or else society will be unsafe for everybody. So I think that for him, he saw the dichotomy is that it's necessary for the police to be there, but the public don't necessarily understand that the police are there to do a job, and the job really is to protect people. At the end of the day, that's what they're there for, to make sure that the rule of law is done, or that people are that people treat each other in the proper way, and not just people, but they act in the proper way as well. So I think for him, he understood that, and I think he wished that people there was better public knowledge as to the need for the police, because even to this day, I don't think there really is, that people don't necessarily look at police the same way they look at, for instance, sort of say Officer Samuels, that they look at firefighters like, oh, great, a firefighter, instead of a police officer. Oh no, a police officer. I mean, you just don't do the same way. And I think it just has to be education. People really have to know that, understand why the police have to be there, and
Yes.
you know.
Wow. Yes, I've been on the other side of that discussion a number of times. Um, Police being compared to firefighters, so I totally understand that.
Hmm.
Now, what types of adversity do you know or think he may have faced, your father, that is, being the first black officer in Durham?
I'm pretty sure there would have been a certain amount of name calling, but my dad had a really thick skin, so it wouldn't have caused any problem. Like he would never have internalized it. He was always very sure of himself, very confident, and very proud. Not in a bad way, but proud, meaning that he recognized who he was and his abilities, and so he wouldn't have taken it personally in the sense that he would internalize it. But the thing about my dad, as I mentioned before, he didn't say anything. So even if there was, he wouldn't have said, he didn't say anything. So, but he would have that would have been the biggest challenge, would have been that, dealing with the race issues. And what's interesting is that there would have been, if let's say there was an incident around race at that time and it was a serious incident, it would have been in a local paper, and there was never anything at all in the local paper. So in other words, I think that he dealt with whatever issues he would have to deal with. I guess specifically the racial issues. He dealt with it in a way that was not detrimental to the department or to himself.
Okay. All right. Um, Obviously, we talked a bit about your father as a police officer. Now, what can you tell us about Wally White away from work?
Away from work.
What was he like at home, and what did he share with you in general beyond policing?
Well, but my dad was kind of complicated guy because he could be very happy, very cheerful, and then not, you know. So a lot of times he'd be singing songs a lot, so he'd be singing around the house. He loved Neil Diamond. He loved Bob Marley. He loved everything. And he had an eclectic taste in music. He seemed to love everything besides country western, but he loved everything. Okay, and so he played a lot of music and he sang a lot of songs. He had, lots of parties. He had lots of friends. He was very, very outgoing, like extremely outgoing. Very comfortable meeting people. Very comfortable in crowds. And you could say he would be like the life of the party. So he was very, very good that way. And but he did have difficulty sometimes with temper from my perspective as a child. I looked at like, you know, can you say this a little bit nicer? But in fairness to my father, he told me that he's been on his own since he was 12 years old, and so he's taking care of himself for most of his life. So a lot of things that I would have thought that would have been learned in the family, he didn't have that opportunity. He mentioned that his father was an alcoholic, and circumstances were as such that he could not stay home. He could not be there, so he had to leave. So
Okay.
so with all things being considered, he did pretty good considering where he came from. But something just came to mind. My friends loved him because he had fun with my friends. So being Jamaican, he had a very thick accent. And so he understood that they didn't understand him. So he just blabbered anything like nonsensical things to them. And he get a kick out of it. And they recognize that, he's having fun with the fact that they have difficulty understanding him. So my friend, a very good friend of mine, when he passed away, he said that, you know what? He said that I liked your dad. And I think that he liked me. And he did. He was very nice to my friends. I always treated my friends with respect and kindness and thoughtfulness. He was very good with my friends, all of them. All of
Okay.
them, everyone that came over.
So,
What's interesting is that my friends were always surprised whenever they came over at supper time. My parents always invited them to join us for supper, always, because that's just what we did in the islands. We invite people if they're there, come and join us for this meal. So
okay. So while your father was a bit of a, I guess, a closed book when it came to his work life, he
mhm.
was quite the opposite by the sound of it. Um, at home, when speaking about things outside of work.
Yeah, he talked about a variety of topics. He had a variety of interests. He talked about a lot of things. Religion is very, not religion, but my faith is very important to me. My dad, whenever he talked to me about my faith, he always talked about it in the context of my faith, not his. So he was able to help me to deal with my strengths or my challenges as it pertains to my religion, and he was always very respectful that way. And he also, when I think about like a lot of times, you can be hypercritical of your parents, and I fall into that category. But when I think about my father as well, he 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 gave me guitar lessons, make sure I had guitar lessons as a kid. I still play guitar to this day. You can see probably behind my little panel there, my guitar sitting right in the corner there. So I've been playing ever since I was a kid, and he's the one that made sure I had that. I didn't ask for that, but he offered me that uh, to join my particular religion. I was 17 at the time when I was looking at it. I had to get permission from my father, and he said, "Son, are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Yes." And so after I said yes, he wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing, and then he just signed that permission to allow me to do that. So he was always very very mindful of certain aspects of my life. I wish he'd have come to my sports games, but he never did. But he didn't have the same interest in the same sports that I did.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
when I think back and I look back at the things that he did, I realized that he did a lot. But I got to tell you, Officer Samuels, I had an experience once where I'm always grateful for being in Canada, because at the end of the day, I think Canada's a great place. It's a place that allows you to it gives you opportunities and allows you to be happy. Like a place where you can be happy. We don't have to be worried about things that I would have been worried about in Jamaica. And I can't tell you the full details, but there's certain aspects of Jamaican life that aren't very good. And I'm always grateful for being in Canada. And once the thought occurred to me that I'm always grateful, but I never told my dad thank you. And I was out driving and I was just admiring how beautiful Canada is. I was out in the country and I was saying, "Oh, it's just such a beautiful place." And I picked the phone up and I said, "Dad," I said, "remember you said you came to Canada to give us a better life?" And he says, "Yes," essentially. And I said, "Well, I just want to say thank you." And then my dad, he was quiet, and he was quiet for 15, 20 seconds, like he was totally quiet. And then he made a joke, to break the ice. But I think that it touched him that I recognized what he did for us, you know.
Wow, that's nice. That's special that you got the chance. That you were able to see that and thought about it, and that you also had the opportunity to thank your father for that. Because I'm sure um, for for him, as was the case for many other people from different countries and the Caribbean specifically, it had to have been really tough to leave home
Hmm.
and go out on your own into a place that is unknown to you to make your way in. And your father was clearly successful in doing that and giving you and your siblings the opportunities that you ended up having. So I think
Hmm.
that's amazing. Um, what one of my final questions here for you, Richard, um, and this obviously pertains to we're here in Black History Month. You're a member of the Black community. Your father was our first, as I said, it was him and another officer um,
Hmm.
that would have been looked upon as being first with Durham Regional Police Service. Um, but with regards to the Black community, I do have a question for you. And what do you think DRPS or policing organizations in general can do to engage with the Black community more in a
to
positive?
to engage in the Black community more. Oh, that's a really good question. There's the Caribbean Cultural Center that is very well organized, and they got some great people there. To me, it would be good if they were to coordinate with an organization like that, because they'd have specific things in specific areas whereby police could help with the Black community. Uh, to me, I'm thinking that there's almost like I can't say an animosity would not be the right word. For a lot of blacks, they look at police with a certain amount of suspicion, you know, and I'm sure that some of it comes from the media and some of the shows that we watch, but some of them actually comes from experience. For me personally, I think it would be good if blacks were aware of what it's like to be a police officer. Because for me, being raised by a police officer, I understand that sometimes when a police officer comes to a vehicle, they don't know what to expect. I understand that, so what they do their best to navigate what would be a very stressful and potentially dangerous situation that they do every time. And so I think it'd be good if people were more aware of what it's like to be a police officer. To me, if people could do like drive-alongs, is it drive-alongs? Is that what they call it? I'm not sure if that's what they call it. If they could
Right.
accompany a police officer to see what it is that they have to go through, especially a Durham officer, because I know there are a lot of shows in the States that show a certain, and they seem to be more sensationalized than the shows in the States. I'm sure here in Oshawa, they would be much, or Oshawa, sorry, Durham region, they would be much less, it'd be more mundane. But I think it would be good if people could have the experience and to understand what it's like to be a police officer dealing with situations that can be unpleasant or uncomfortable. I think public awareness is very important. And the other thing as well is that I think as a Black community that we need to be aware that for police officers that if you treat them nice, then they respond nice. And case in point, I should let you know, Officer Samuels, like I get pulled over regularly, probably every 3 or 4 months. Okay. And I'm always very mindful that, hi, officer. And I always address them officer, and I always address them very politely, and 99% of the interactions are very positive. They say, thanks, have a nice day, just checking this or checking that. They say, oh, we want to warn you about this or warn you about that, but, have a nice day. And that's 99% of my interaction. And I was pulled over once many years ago. This is probably about 30 some odd years ago. Last time I was speeding, I was pulled over by an officer in Oshawa. The officer, I recognized him, but he probably didn't recognize me because he knew me as a kid. So I recognized the officer, and I didn't tell him, oh, by the way, I'm Wally's son. And he pulled me over, and he said, you were speeding. And I didn't realize I was. I was coming home from work, and I had my sister with me. And then after he gave me the ticket, it was a small ticket. At the time, probably would have been 20 bucks or something. It wasn't much. And my sister said to me, "Oh, Richard, you were so polite to that officer." I didn't realize I was being polite, but that's just the way I deal with police officers, and they treat me with respect because I treat them with respect. But the last thing, which I think is important, which I found interesting, there was a lot of negative. There's a lot of negative press, a lot of negative interaction with police over the past year that was being made very public, and I can't tell you what my full thoughts on crime in the black community is. I don't think that would be appropriate to share that here. But I would see police officers, and when I saw they were in a position where it was that open space, there were people around, and it was a place where I could approach a police officer without his feeling any amount of concern. I would approach the police officer. It was usually in my vehicle, and I would thank them for their service and let them know that I appreciate their being there. Let them know that I have kids. I've got 5 daughters and a son. My son, I'm sure he's okay, but I got five daughters that I worry about, and I'm glad there are police officers out there to provide a service if it's necessary for them. So I let them know I appreciate it. And what's interesting is that they say thank you, and I could tell they're grateful for that. Just my sharing that little bit. So the police, they're there. They're human beings. They're doing a job that has to be done.
Mhm.
And I think there just needs to be a bit more understanding on both parts, from the officers understanding that for the Black community that there is a certain amount of suspicion, and for the Black community understanding that the police officers, they're just people trying to do a service that is necessary.
And no, I appreciate that. I think you touched on it, that it's a mutual understanding that's required.
Hmm.
I know you mentioned reaching out to organizations like the Caribbean Cultural Center on the part of the police, and you focused a lot on what members of the Black community could do to help those interactions. But without a doubt, certainly there's more that we as a policing organization can do to make those inroads with the Black community, as well as to kind of bring up our own level of competency and understanding, so that when we're engaging members of, whether it is the Black community or any other community out there, that we're doing it in such a way that's going to promote positive interactions versus otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I appreciate that your suggestion that it's a mutual piece of work that we need to focus on to improve any relations that we have and to build the bridges.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's basically all I have in terms of questions. But one thing I do want to take a moment to do is to just to recognize your father. I didn't know your father. I started probably a good bit after he would have retired. I
Mm-hmm.
have heard your father's name a number of times,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I've heard nothing but good things and that he was well respected. But certainly, so that's me speaking as a member of Durham Regional Police Service, but also for me as a member of the Black community and specifically um, a member of the Jamaican Canadian community, in that my
Mm-hmm.
parents are both from Jamaica. I was born here, but that's my background. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have, I certainly appreciate the steps that your father would have taken, the things that he would have had to have gone through in essence, pave the road for people like me to come afterward. So
Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have been able to thank him personally, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. But I thank you for taking the time to speak with us today and to share some information about your father. And ultimately, I thank your father for all that he did.
If I could share, as you're talking, that there's something I think that would be important for me to share as it pertains to the police force.
Please
At
do.
my father's funeral, there were a number of police officers that served with him that showed up. I was surprised, and I heard more stories about him and policing than I ever had. And they were sharing with me stories about my father as a police officer that they worked with. And it was interesting was that a lot of them that they were cheering up as they were talking about their experience with dad. So I could tell that they really respected him, they loved him. And one of the things that my dad said to me when I asked him about this is years before he was sick. So this is years before I asked him if he plans to be buried in Jamaica. He said, "Why?" He said, "My home is here." And so he's made this place home. Not that he's made it, but people have made him feel at home here. And the police force, the Durham police force, and the Oshawa police force made that possible. So just want to thank the police force and the people at the time that were willing to take a chance, because they did take a chance to hire my father at that time, and we appreciate it, and I know my siblings appreciate it as well.
Well, thank you. Um, well, I thank you for taking the time to speak to us today, Richard. And I look forward to connecting with you once again, hopefully sometime in the near future. But thank you.
Okay, sounds good.